So there's more U.S. investors going to Indonesia, but obviously not enough. We need more U.S. investments. And we have come up with an investment law where we treat where we treat foreign investors and domestic investors with equal conditions. There's still some negative lists, some areas where I'm not that open to foreign participation, but this is something that is normal.
What are those?
Telecommunication, sorry?
Yeah, Afghan for the fire, some it's too close to some area like
Sector
Ghana. Yeah, many. Some they're on fire only.
Okay.
Closely.
Okay. All right. And foreign investment in Indonesia has doubled, right? In the last few years or so. And well, the good story is investors who spend their money in Indonesia usually make heaps of money. That's my best selling point, and yes, good. Conditions, well, in Indonesia, in fact, the challenge is with our unions, because our union have become very, very strong in Indonesia. We had a period under President Megawati in 2001 when we came up with very strong labor laws, and it's meant to protect the labor and improve labor conditions. And at the moment, now we're trying to create better industrial relations in Indonesia based on these very, very strong labor laws in Indonesia. The unions are very, very strong, and they ensure that workers' rights are well protected in Indonesia. Sometimes the investors complain about it, but it's like that everywhere it is.
Let's take questions from our audience. We have microphones, and if I may ask you to wait until a microphone appears in front of you, please raise your hands when I ask a question. And as we're waiting for that, you talked a lot about partnerships, strategic dialogue, strategic partnerships, and as you said, you're seeing a lot more of that. Is that also because of a recognition that the United Nations is not very efficient and effective?
No, I think we can do both. I think multilateralism for us is very important because there are a number of the issues that cannot be achieved without strong multilateral cooperation. Climate change, for example, and for us, the WTO is very, very important to liberalize free trade in the world. So for us, multilateralism is key to international cooperation, but it is not a zero-sum game in terms of the importance of bilateral relations. But we do recognize that at the moment, global issues are having difficult fight. Climate change is very much a struggle. The world community cannot come to a consensus. The World Trade Organization, the Doha round is stuck, right? The nuclear non-proliferation effort is also stagnating. The one that we see the most progress is on the post-MDG, Millennium Development Goals, to define the direction of world development after 2015. So there's been some good progress there. But on the overall, we're seeing that international efforts to address global issues are really, really painfully slow.
As they are in the United States, some of the domestic issues. Alan, you have a question.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much. I want to say you're a great representative of your country. I must say that. With 86% Muslim population, and as you indicated, throughout the Middle East, essentially Muslim populations have no democracies. How do you differentiate the type of Islam that your people have in your country compared to that makes the difference to allow you to have and continue a democracy?
Very good question. I wish I can pin my finger down on a particular answer, but look, I'll tell you what worries me, sir. What worries me now is within the Islamic world, there is a fault line developing between the Sunnis and the Shiites. And it's worrying fault line because if you look in the Middle East, the conflicts in the Middle East, internal and external conflicts, you see this. shaping up. And in Indonesia, and especially and including in Southeast Asia, we don't see this fault line. Right? You see this particularly in the Middle East. And in Southeast Asia, the brand of Islam is very modern, moderate and tolerant. In Indonesia, it's like that. In Malaysia, it's like that.
And for the benefit of our audience,
Yeah.
Sunni, Shia?
It's very difficult. That's going to be. It's okay. Shiite is a very political region. Shiite believe that there's an imam called Imam Mahdi who disappeared from the world, and one day he will come down to earth. And the purpose of Muslims around the world, particularly Shiites, is to prepare for his coming down to earth. And so that makes the Shiites very political in terms of their ambitions, their worldview, and their rituals as well. Whereas the Sunnis, we don't believe that. So the Sunnis are much less political in that sense. My mom is very religious. My mom wears a veil, and in Indonesia, there are more and more people are becoming more religious. But my mom would not vote for an Islamic party, right? So she separates her religiosity with her political preference. And I think this is true for most of Indonesian electorates, and this is the reason of our ability to combine democracy, Islam, and modernity. And I think if the same thing happens in the Middle East, I think they're going to be more or less in a good place as we are today.
Do we have other questions here? Yes. Then we'll get to you next, Wayne.
Good afternoon.
If you'd introduce yourself, Professor.
I'm Annie Wong, currently with the Southern Methodist University Tower Center. Also, I was with the RAND Corporation in Washington, D.C., so I had the pleasure of meeting you, Ambassador, a couple of years ago when we hosted a reception for the President of East Timor.
Oh, good.
Yes. And my question pertains to Indonesia's effort, as I understand, to increase its science and tech capacity. As the economy grows, it is seeking to add more value to its products and better quality of life for its people. I understand that Indonesia is in the process of considering the creation of an Indonesian Science Foundation. In terms of what can the U.S. and Indonesia do cooperatively to enhance S&T capacity in Indonesia, could you speak on that, please?
Yeah, well, thanks. As we try to maintain our momentum, I think our capacity to absorb technology and develop knowledge economy is going to be increasingly important to Indonesia. And this is one of my key challenges as ambassador to the United States, that is to intensify university-to-university cooperation, especially in joint research projects, and this is why I have the educational attaché with us. I think one of the challenges that we face is that we have to reverse the number of Indonesian students studying in America. 20 years ago, and again, this goes back to the point about China and the United States. 20 years ago, there were 15,000 Indonesian students studying in the United States and 0 in China, right? Because Indonesians don't speak Chinese, we don't know. We know MIT, we know Harvard, we know University of Texas, and so on. But we don't know much about the University of China. And you know what it is now? The number of Indonesian students in the United States, half to 7,500, and those studying in China up to 8,000, right? So there are more Indonesian students studying in China and the United States. And for me, that's a bit baffling because, look, when you talk about innovation, no one really beats the United States, Silicon Valley, MIT, and so on and so on. So we're really trying very hard to redouble that number, and especially not just getting more students here, but getting more innovators from Indonesia and the United States to work together and more research projects, because that's going to be important for our scientific development in the future.
Wayne, let me give you the last word.
Wayne Forrest of the American Indonesian Chamber of Commerce. I guess if I have the last word, then I will want to thank Jim, your organization, for working with my organization to help put this together, and to have here today the representatives of your cultural institutions who are featuring Indonesia this week. And I had a hand in it because I lived in Indonesia, studied music there, and it's been an honor for me to bring here to Dallas my teachers and some of the masters that I got to know when I was a young guy out of college. And I've seen, Dallas and Texas, through my organization, have great connections to Indonesia. Well, those connections are somewhat challenged in some ways, I think, by perhaps the democracy that has emerged in Indonesia and more power centers and more decision-making, perhaps making it a little more difficult for certain industries to go forward. So I'm going to end this, Dino, by asking you to kind of look to the future. The presidency of SBY, is going to be ending next year. Indonesia will have another of its 5-year presidential elections. Looking at the last three and how three or four and how they've gone, what do you see coming? What would you see coming down the road in terms of an election? What changes might come as a result of it? Will the United States still have the same position vis-a-vis Indonesia in a future administration? Yeah, that's
Good.
I think that'd be a good closing.
I also want to thank Wayne Forrest, who helped organize this event, working with the World Affairs Council. So thanks. Look, I would like to believe, and I hope I'm right in saying this, that in Indonesia, democracy has achieved a point of no return, right? That there's no prospect of military coup in Indonesia. And you don't have to take my word for it, but you can ask people who are knowledgeable about Indonesia. I think they would say the same. It's impossible to have a military coup in Indonesia, the way it happened in Thailand, for example, which still surprised us when that happened. So I think the good news is that in Indonesia, democracy is irreversible. Right? The second point is, I know which direction Wayne is asking. You're asking, what if we elect the wrong leaders, right? Or what if, different kind of leaders that, look at what happened in the Philippines. Under Fidel Ramos, they had high growth, great leader, but then he stepped down and they had a president who went to jail and so on, and then the Philippine economy went down, and it took them a while to recover after a while. So I think the point is validly made that leadership is very important to maintain the trajectory of growth of any nation, Indonesia, Brazil, Argentina, the Philippines, Malaysia, and so on and so on. So that point is valid because next year we have the first presidential elections where the president will step down. But I think the luxury of any Indonesian president going too far off the rack is minimal. Why? Because civil society is so strong in Indonesia. We have full press freedom. Some people in Indonesia say press freedom is more free than the United States. I don't know if that's true, but that's probably yeah, it's true. There you go. In Indonesia, as happened there was President Abdurrahman Wahid in 2002 who tried to disband parliament, and just after 3 years of the first elections, and that ruined him because it's just impossible. Once people tasted freedom and democracy, they're not going to give that up, right? So the next president will have a lot of leeways, a lot of imagination to recreate Indonesia and the future path, but he or she cannot go off the rack. He or she would have to maintain in the corridor of democratic accountability, and our history has taught us if that person wastes the people's trust, then the leader will have to account for it. Indonesian history and electorate are not kind to leaders who disappoint them, and that's the way democracy should work.
Your Excellency, it doesn't always happen where someone ends their talk here on an optimistic note. Thanks for doing that. Council, as well as your chamber, we'd like to present you with the official World Affairs Council tie. You'll always know what time it is around the world. Interns, you are holding a microphone, aren't you? Please introduce yourself and tell us what school you're from.
I go to Hamilton College.
Right?
I'm Julie Fisher. I go to American University in DC.
We are so lucky this summer to have such a great group of interns, and they help us so much, so thank you and all of your colleagues for being with us. You'll also see a little handout about trips. We're expanding our travel department at the World Affairs Council. Be sure to give Jocelyn, stand up. She's tall. Jocelyn Lancaster a call about the trip to Myanmar, Cuba, Morocco, wherever else. Again, Your Excellency, thanks so much for being with us.